Morning, ladies and gentlemen, and what a great pleasure it is for me to be here today. I want to speak with you about innovation. I want to speak with you about a whole new paradigm that I've created and I use called opportunity capture. And perhaps whilst I'm speaking, you may like to think about what these words mean. What's innovation mean? What's opportunity mean? How do you find an opportunity? I've developed a process which I'm going to share with you that shows you how to develop innovation in a systematic way. It amazes me when I go into large companies and I ask them, what's innovation? Nobody has a definition. If you don't know what it is, how do you know when you're doing it? I'll tell you one of the things that universities teach. This is what universities teach for innovation. Don't write this down. You won't have enough ink in your pen. This is university. Innovation is a process with a latent capacity to change the prevailing behaviour for a group of people who initially had a stable behavioural platform. Whoa. Does that help you? I don't think so. I love to keep things simple. I'm a humble engineer, and I think there's possibly many engineers in this audience. And so let's explore the subject of innovation, opportunity, and let's talk about some examples of how we've used this in companies worldwide with some stunning successes and some simple successes. I come from a platform that says this: there is no product, process or service in the world that is free from the opportunity to innovate. And if you wish to disagree with that, what you're telling me is what you do, use, think or play with today will be the same in 20 years' time or 50 years' time. And of course, that is complete nonsense. So let's talk about innovation and opportunity capture. And firstly, why we need to embrace these things. This is a graph of the performance of businesses over time. The timeline there for extinction of a business from start to finish of a business in the 1920s was 65 years. In the 1920s, a public company in the USA could expect to be around for 65 years. By the 1990s, that had fallen to 10 years, and today it's approaching 5 years. 5 years. If you are not constantly moving your products, processes, services and customer offering to an ever better place, you can be sure someone will move in and take your place. And we see many, many examples of this. I mean, I've just written some blogs on this particular subject about mission statements. Do you have a mission statement? Do you ever innovate your mission statement? And what does innovation mean? It means change it. It's interesting. I wonder what Kodak's mission statement might have been 20 years ago. It might have been, we are the premier company developing film emulsion and services for cameras. Perhaps that was it. Whereas Kodak today, virtually non-existent. I wonder what Hewlett-Packard's mission statement may have been when Hewlett and Packard started their business in the 1930s. These guys were engineers, I think, at one of the great universities in America, and they developed the first Wien bridge oscillator. Now, if you're not an electronic person, you won't understand that, but basically it's an instrument. Hewlett-Packard developed its business as scientific instruments, and they became premier in that business. In the last 15 years, they've morphed. They've moved their business. Their mission statement is no longer, we are the premier company in scientific instruments. They have moved. They're now in consumer products. They've seen it. They've been prepared to shift. We must be prepared to keep moving. Now, as I said, if you're not moving, the life expectancy of your business is likely to be 5 years. So we need to be moving. But, and I've just been reading a book on this subject. I don't read a lot of business books, but this one actually, written by an Indian gentleman, seems to me to be very, very much in my space. It's top-down, not top-down innovation, not the big R&D department spending billions with who knows what return on assets. It's bottom-up innovation. It's about finding opportunities. Now, in business, I often ask at conferences, what is the most important department in a business? I'm sure I get the same answer in this room. Do you know who most often puts their hand up when I say, what is the most important department in a business? IT. The IT people put their hand up. Ladies and gentlemen, can I suggest to you there is only one important department in any business? It's called sales. If you are not selling stuff, none of us have a job. It's about selling things. And innovation is about finding new and better ways to sell and new and better things to sell. And IT, CIOs, finance departments, HR managers, and all those people, sales and market, they all exist to support the people out there selling stuff. So I like to think about innovation very simply. Some people talk about some of the, should I say, higher academic institutions talk about strategy, vision, people, culture, mission, etc. And the meld of all these in the Venn diagram provides a thing called innovation. This is ridiculous. It's nonsense. Let me show you how simple this can be. Nothing happens without first an opportunity. We have to find opportunities. What I want to share with you a little later in this presentation is the systematic approach to finding opportunities and how we can do that. We start by finding an opportunity. Then we do our exploration of the opportunity. This is what I call innovation. Then we evaluate the opportunity and we either pass or fail it. Now, there is no sin in picking an opportunity, doing some evaluation and failing. Fast failure is good as long as it's not expensive. I see many inventors. I would probably have every week an inventor comes to me with a product. And these people are so passionate they will not fail. And you know what? I've got a saying. Persistence is an important element of success. You must persist to get there. And when you see a speaker on the podium here saying, I succeeded, they will be saying, I succeeded against all the odds. I had to persist. And that's true. You need to persist. You need to be tough. You need to be brave. But I'll tell you one thing. For every person up there speaking about their success story and their persistence, do you know what? 10,000 have tried and have lost everything they own. We never hear from them, do we? So I've got this saying, persistence is an important element of success. You've got to persist. Persistence is an essential element of failure. You have to know when to stop. And there's no shame in that. That's a good decision. So we evaluate our idea, and it's fail early, fail cheap. If we like it, we go ahead and we go to market. That's the simple process of innovation that I talk about. Now, before I talk about the process of thinking, I'd like to talk about this. Whenever I see a new product or a new service or a new opportunity, the first thing I do is say, where does it fit on this map? There are only two risks in business. And you people in this room will be able to understand this instantly. The first risk is, can I do it? Can I do it? Now, if I said to you, look, I want to put a second battery in this machine here so that if it goes flat, it automatically flips to the next battery, the tech heads in this room would say, yeah, we can do that. That's simple. If I say to you, I want to invent anti-gravity boots so I can wander around the room or the world without any effort, the tech heads are going to say, hold on, this is a big job. This could take 100 years. It could cost $50 billion or more. It's not even possible, perhaps. Technical people can evaluate technical risk. And if you can evaluate it, you can measure it, and you can decide if it's a good idea or not. The single biggest risk in business is market risk. Can I sell it? And the businesses I see that fail, all fail for the same reason. You fail to sell your product. It's that simple. So the secret to this game is to find opportunities and innovation with low market risk. And it's not that hard to do. Now, that doesn't say you don't undertake disruptive innovation. There are a lot of schools of thought saying if you are disrupting, you are taking great risk. That's not necessarily the case. One of the most disruptive technologies in history was television. Now, if somebody came to you and said, I've invented this doodah that allows you to see pictures on your radio, would you think that's high risk? I would say not at all. All I've done is taken a radio and I've improved it to add a picture. There's no risk there at all. But that was probably one of the most disruptive technologies of the early 20th century. Perhaps the internet was a later disruption, which was massively disruptive. So I like to think about products and services where they fit. Now, basically, we've got, on the bottom axis here, low industrial and commercial products. Now, these are products we can measure what we refer to as a value proposition. In other words, if I invest in the product, how much money am I going to get back and what's the return? The second group is consumer products. However do you measure how good they are? Like, it's really just hit and miss. The third one is fashion. Impossible to measure. Bring a fashion to market. One person's idea of a fashion is not another person's. This is every product or service in the world fits into one of those categories. Some fit into all. On the other axis, we have what I call novelty. When you have a new product, a new service, a new IT solution or whatever, we have a thing called novelty. Now, novelty means how new is it? If it's absolutely unprecedented and no one's ever heard of it, you're going to have a lot of trouble getting that off the ground because people don't understand new stuff. In fact, there's a whole school of thought called fast second. You don't have to be first to market. Be second and do it better. Find out what's selling and do it better. There's no risk. So I've developed this simple drawing. Now, some years ago, I ran into a fellow who was actually offered an investment opportunity, what we call a ground floor opportunity for the Rubik's Cube. You know that doodah you turn in all different shapes? The Rubik's Cube. Guess what this fellow said? I don't want to invest in that. Why would you not invest in that? The answer is simple. It's very high novelty and it's sort of fashion and consumer. No one knows what to do with that. It's a dumb idea. But more by good luck than good management, it was a success story. But if I came to you with the first ever shifting spanner, an adjustable spanner that mechanics and tradespeople use, and I've patented this, you would invest in that in an instant. Why? Because it's got industrial applications. I can see the benefit, and more to the point, because it's low novelty, people understand it. And I love the example, which I always talk about, is either the photocopier or the facsimile machine. Remember the old fax machine we all had? Probably we don't now. We use emails and scanning. I asked this question at a conference in India, probably 4 or 5 years ago, to a very, very large gathering of students, and somebody Googled the answer. Google, there's another one. Googled the answer before I'd even had the question finished. The question is, when was a fax machine first patented? First patent lodged for a fax machine was in 1864. It took 100 years to get to market. The computer mouse took 15 years to get to market. The internet took 15 years before we even discovered it. People have trouble with new stuff. So what I like to think about is how we look at products and services in the bottom right-hand corner of that drawing. So that's fundamentally how I look at markets. And as I said, market risk is the single biggest risk in business. What I'd like to do now is talk to you about the process of thinking. A lot of organisations say, okay, we're going to get together, we're going to innovate. Well, what does innovate mean? Great question. So let's develop a definition based on this. Low market risk products are innovated products. If you do a Microsoft Word search of the word innovate, the synonym is change. People only buy products because they see value for money. From this, we get the perfect definition of innovation. Innovation is defined as change that adds value. Change that adds value. There isn't a product, process, or service in the world you cannot innovate. I'm going to show you some examples of this, some ridiculously simple examples. In fact, I think I might even have one in my pocket. I was doing some work. I'm sure I have one. I was doing some work in a far-flung country some years ago, and a company came to me and they said, we're in the business of making certain products. And this product, which I don't seem to have with me, I thought, oh, yes, I do. This product was a tea bag. And we were doing an innovation workshop, and they said to me, you said you can innovate anything. I said, that's correct. And they said, innovate that. So we did. We did. We came up with a better tea bag, and we've lodged patents for it. I'm going to show you how we did that in a moment when we talk about the methodology for thinking. So let's first talk about product innovation. By product, I mean something that's physically tangible, I can pick up and hold. This may look like a very complex drawing. In fact, it is very simple. I've used this in elementary schools. I mean, kids of grade 5 and 6. If I give this product to any group of people, give them 15 minutes, I give them this drawing, give you a product, give you 15 minutes, I can guarantee you will come up with a better product, an innovated product. Then we have a very simple quantitative method to see if it's a good idea. Now, basically, this is a simple array of drawings. It's called a matrix. That's why I refer to my methodology as matrix thinking. If you are selling a product in the market, there are only 4 things you can do to improve your business. And too few people think about this. The first one is the top left-hand one, and I call these the seeds. These are the things you plant in the ground, and then you pour a chemical on called a catalyst, and they're across the top. And an intersection of a seed and a catalyst asks your people, your customers, your friends, or anybody to think, how can I change that like this? And here's some simple examples. We're not getting the laser pointer here. I'm trying to get back to the previous, that matrix. The first one says change, and the ways to think of this are 12 ways here. The first one is future gazing, and I love it when I come to a conference like this. This is an amazing venue. Amazing. But you know what I notice about venues like this? Every venue like this has loudspeakers. Loudspeakers have not changed for 80 or 100 years. I cannot believe there is not a better way to move air than a loudspeaker. And the people at the front hear a lot of noise, and the people at the back hear not so much noise. There's got to be a way to improve a loudspeaker. The next one is I wish. Put a product on the table, I don't care what it is, and get people to simply answer the question, I wish this product would. You get a list of 20 wishes in 5 minutes. Once you've got these wishes, you evaluate them. The next one is re-question. Ask a better question. Often, and I think any engineer would know, when you do a product development, you finish a development, you say, oh boy, I wish I could start and do that again, I'd do it better. The reason, you would ask better questions. And so we go all through these. New function is another one. Every time a new iPhone comes out or a new phone comes out, hasn't it got an additional function? I'll give you an example of new function. There's another one of these here called those initials. If you're IYFHIYDW, that means if you're finding it hard, you're doing it wrong. It means frustration. What annoys me? If you can find a product, process or service that someone's annoyed by, that's a screaming opportunity for innovation. Now, I'll tell you a simple story. In 1987 or thereabouts, I was walking down the street and I heard a man in a hole in the ground swearing, cursing. And I immediately realised this fellow was frustrated. So I went across to him and I said, "Sir, what do you do for a living?" He said, "I repair telephone line faults." I said, "Interesting. Why are you so angry?" He said, "Because in order to repair a telephone line fault, I have to get out of this hole and I have to get in my car and drive up to 20 kilometres to the other end of the line. And then I've got to do some fiddling there, and then I've got to drive back. And then I've got to do some fiddling here, I've got to drive back. I've got 5 trips to fix every fault." I said, "That's interesting." I went away and thought about this. About 6 months later, it hit me. I know how to solve that problem. I developed a solution, a simple IT solution to this problem that meant the fellow only had to make 1 trip. We developed this, we patented it. That was in 1987. The company that makes that product still exists today. And you know what's even better? The telephone company in Australia, Telecom Australia in those days, actually paid for the development. Cost us nothing. And what was even better, when we gave the technicians the product to use, they did an evaluation of this product and they came to the conclusion that every person that had this product had an efficiency gain that paid for it in 10 working days. This is a simple product innovation matrix. It is so simple. You simply go through this drawing with your product and then you look at accessories. Once you're selling a product, do you think about the accessories that you could be selling with it? There are so many companies in the world today that sell nothing more than accessories. Heavens above, how many companies sell accessories for the iPhone or for 4-wheel drive vehicles? These companies only exist because someone first created an opportunity for them. And so it goes on. And one of these here at the end is called transfer. Transfer is a very powerful innovation initiative. It means look at what someone's done in another paradigm and see if you can move it to this paradigm. And there's many, many examples of that, and I'll talk about one. In fact, I'll talk about one we did some years ago. This is an IT solution. In the early 90s, before we all had mobile phones, no one had accurate clocks or watches or time. In fact, in Sydney, the train drivers used their wristwatch to determine if the train was on time. Can you believe that? In 1990. So I happened to be travelling in Europe and I discovered that in Frankfurt there was a radio transmitter that puts out precise time signals. These signals are exceptionally accurate. You're talking microseconds here. And you could buy watches and clocks that would receive this signal and keep perfect time. Now, I thought about this when I got back to Australia, and I came to the conclusion that Australia, you may or may not be that familiar with Australia, we have the most complex time zones anywhere in the world. And in fact, until some years ago, Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne and Tasmania, all on the same north axis, all changed their clocks for summertime on a different month. You could get in an aeroplane and fly 1 hour north to Sydney and land before you left. This was unbelievable, and I thought there's got to be a solution to this. Now, I looked at what they'd done in Europe, and I said they've got an accurate time system. Now, in Frankfurt, the transmitter is a 100 kilowatts. They spend $1 million a year sending that signal out, an accurate time signal. And I thought to myself, how can I send that signal out in Australia and be the king of time? So I did a little exploration. This is called an opportunity. And I discovered the wireless paging network. Remember when we all used to carry pocket pages? And I thought to myself, I approached our telephone authority and I said, folks, I want to send out a time signal from your paging system and make clocks to follow the time so we got accurate time, because no one in Australia had accurate time. No one in the world had accurate time. You get booked at a parking meter, you could take it to court in 1990 because you couldn't prove the parking meter had the correct time. There's no traceable time standard unless you're in a laboratory. Anyway, the bottom line is the telecom authority said to me, yes, we like your idea, but we don't want to do it. I said, why don't you want to do it? They said, well, because people ring up and get the time at the moment, and we make $26 million a year from people ringing up to get the time. Why would we want to give you this? I said, it's very simple. It's very simple. If you don't give it to me, I'll get your competitor to do it. We're going to take your business anyway. And they thought, yes, you're right. They funded our development. What we ended up doing was creating a mechanism to send out precise time signals from the paging network. Now, you might think, oh, that's pretty obvious and pretty simple, but it was not. It was very complex until we had the aha moment, the innovative insight. Now, I know there's a lot of very clever people in this room. You'll pick this up in 2 seconds. I love to sketch on a whiteboard when I talk about this stuff because it brings it to life. But vision this. I have a radio transmitter. It's a paging network. I'm going to send out a signal with the time. There's a problem. I don't know when my signal is going to go to air, because every signal in a paging network is in a queue. And the queue can be from 5 seconds to 7 minutes in length. So I put an accurate time signal in my paging system. I have no idea when it's going to go to air. How do we solve this problem? Every problem has a solution, a simple IT solution. I wonder if anyone can think. It's called differential correction. We use it for GPS before they will stop wobulating the signal. What we created and patented was a very simple technique. We built a whole range of clocks with a paging receiver in them, and we sent out a signal we called a mark. Now, we had no idea what time it was. We just sent that out roughly every hour. The clocks all around Australia received that signal. They didn't know what time it was. But we also received that signal back at the paging station that transmitted it. And because radio waves travel at the speed of light, essentially every clock in Australia received this time signal at the same time. We also received that back at the paging station. We then knew exactly what time the signal was received, correct? So we then sent a correction. We did that every hour. We sent a mark, and then when we got the signal, we sent out a correction. Clock, you know that mark you received, the exact time at that point was so-and-so, and the clock's corrected. So we started selling clocks, and these clocks were big digital clocks and analog clocks. And every hour we sent them a signal. And we were selling clocks for 15 years until everyone started embracing mobile phones with great accurate time on them. And you know what? Our guarantee was, if your clock is ever 1 second out, we will refund your money. And we never ever refunded anyone any money. We corrected the time for every time zone in Australia and even for leap seconds. This was stunningly simple. These things don't have to be complex. So these are the things you do. Now, the last thing you do when you've done your innovation and you're doing the evaluation of your product or your service or whatever it is, you look at the bottom thing there. It may be difficult to see from the people close up here. It's called consequential change. Before you put your product, process or service in the market, think about the consequences. What was the consequences? What was the consequences of Apple introducing the iPhone? They killed the iPod. The iPhone could carry all the music. You didn't need an iPod. So the consequential effect of introducing the iPhone was to kill the iPod. Now, they knew this was going to happen, and that's when they brought out the little iNano. They'd provided value in a different form. Their value provision was in size, not functionality. It was in the design. Now, that's a product innovation matrix. I want to get